What's going on, Restoration Nation? Rico Garcia here, and I'm super stoked to bring you this podcast. But before we jump into that, I just want to give you a little bit of a story here. It seems as if on this particular podcast, the insurance gods did not want this message to get out there. Halfway through the podcast, on my guest side, there was apparently someone who crashed into an electric pole with lost power. We had to jump back on the podcast several hours later. And then for like 2 days, for whatever reason, just the podcast on my guest side just couldn't upload. It was an absolute nightmare. But I think that that's a testament to how good this podcast genuinely is. Our guest, Tom Gissler, the president of Restoration One, on this episode just brings the heat. He's such an amazing individual, such a great story, and an amazing way of looking at company culture and scaling. And we talk a lot about some of the big important topics that a lot of us restoration contractors are constantly talking about, right? TPA versus direct consumer, like all of these small yet wildly important topics we're going to be covering, and a lot more. You're not going to want to miss any part of this interview because it was tons of fun and so much insight that Tom offers with regards to the business and how to scale and company culture and everything else. It was amazing. Now, before we jump into the podcast, first and foremost, just want to give a big shout out to our show sponsors, starting with CNR Magazine, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten your copy of CNR Magazine yet, I really don't know what you're waiting for. Just head on over to cnrmagazine.com. There's a big red subscribe button. Smash that. Put in your info and you would be subscribed totally free to the CNR Magazine. And that way you can kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the restoration industry, if that's your thing. Also want to give a big shout out to Company Cam. And as per usual, we'll go ahead and do a little bit of a deeper dive on Company Cam and all of those amazing features somewhere in the episode. Meanwhile, buckle in. It's going to be a fun ride. I hope you enjoy. Let's go.
Owning any type of restoration business is demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
All right, guys, what is up? We are back again. I am extremely excited. I know that I say that quite a bit, but I genuinely mean it this time. So today I'm joined by none other than Tom Gissler, president of Restoration One. And Tom and I had the pleasure of meeting Tom at business retreat in Captiva that's put on by Violand. And I got to say, it was just such an amazing individual to talk to that I literally was hounding him for months to get him on the podcast. And today we are joined by Tom. Tom, thanks again, man, so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate you.
My pleasure, man. I couldn't wait to be on this because you're so high energy. I rarely meet people that can match my energy, and I think you match it and surpass it. So I'm incredibly excited. You're going to get me amped up, and everybody's going to pay for it for the rest of the week.
It's going to be an amazing thing. It's a good thing it's towards the tail end of the week. So off camera, right, I was telling Tom, and I'll tell you guys that are watching and listening to a podcast that he was on while I was driving back home after Captiva, and my wife's in the car. And she just turns to me like every 2 minutes. She goes, "Oh my God, this sounds like you. I feel like I'm listening to you." Now, mind you, my wife gets like a double dose of Rico. She gets the regular Rico every single day. And then she does a lot of like the pull out. So she's constantly listening to the interviews to the point to where I walk in the house sometimes and I'm like, "Honey, please turn that off. I don't want to hear my voice anymore." So Tom, fill in some of the gaps on the intro for those people that don't know who you are. Kind of give us the origin story and take us up to speed.
Yeah. So I was out of grad school at Baylor University in Waco. I was running the middle of the country for Habitat for Humanity. I had a young family and realized that nonprofit was great. Having a job that was missional in the sense that I felt like I was helping people was something that I really enjoyed and was passionate about, but the pay wasn't bringing home the bacon at the level I needed when I had 2 babies, and it was a lot. So I started to look around for how could I take my experience and transfer it to something that would pay more. And a friend said, I've got a brother that works for ServPro, essentially corporate. They had master licenses where they were basically a corporate arm in the field in Dallas, Texas, looking for somebody with talent. And he lined up a lunch. I met with this family. They hired me. And I didn't know at that time, like so many people don't, like the average person who runs into restoration for the first time, it's out of need. My need wasn't a water damage or a fire damage. My need was I needed a job. And I discovered ServPro. It's like anybody else. Suddenly I went from not recognizing the brand to seeing their vans everywhere and understanding what restoration was. I fell in love with the industry because it combined for me a couple of things. One, there was a lot of money in it, industry that rewarded hustle. And I know hustle is an overused word, but you know, if you join the banking industry, hustle is going to land you in prison, right? You got to be careful. If you join like a lot of industries or take traditional paths, you know, there's not a lot of hustle in engineering, I imagine, or whatever. This is one of the last industries that really rewards hustle and luck. I've got those by the bucket full. It was someplace that I recognized that a path was laid out in front of me. I was with them for 3 years. A gentleman came to me and said, would you come partner with me on a franchise in Houston? So I went from the corporate side to the franchise side. We grew that franchise to be very, very large. Won ServPro Franchise of the Year. I then left, sold out to him, went to work for Belfour. I was excited to work for Belfour because as much money as we were making in ServPro, they would have single jobs that equaled my entire revenue, yearly revenue at ServPro. And I had entered and dipped my toe essentially in the commercial market, which at that time was relatively rare for ServPro, heavy residential and program oriented. But I was dipping my toe into commercial, which is where I ran into some of the Belfour guys, ran their shop through a couple of hurricane seasons. They had a management buyout and a move of their management to a central location, which left me out in the cold. I opened up a contents company in the Houston market, partnering with an existing company in Dallas to do basically restoration, dry cleaning, and electronics. Sold out to there, was with PuraClean for a few years. That's where I met my current wife, hopefully my last wife. It's expensive to change wives, but I met her there. We were at PuraClean. I ran the middle of the country for PuraClean, and then I went to the eastern part of the country and finally ended up as their director of catastrophic operations, finishing with Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey. Went out on my own again. I've sort of swung between independent and franchise brands throughout my career. We opened up a couple of independent locations, sold those, went to work for a company called Rytec. And Rytec is a little brand. You're probably familiar with them in Florida. They've got a pretty large Florida footprint. They're really trying to grow their footprint outside of Florida. Again, very heavy program focus. And my experience, no shade on Rytec, my personality did not fit the Rytec model. And after a year, they politely asked me if I might consider other possibilities in life other than restoration. And we had to part ways. And it left me in this point where I was in this really a midlife crisis because what I had been doing is just changing the color of my polo and keep going to PLRB, keep going to the same contacts in the insurance industry. I just didn't want to do that anymore. And I had a little bit of a pocket change from being blessed in this career. And my wife had a fantastic career. And so she said, why don't you just go do something else? Just get out and clear your head, go do anything. And I think she probably had other things in mind. But a guy at the gym I was at the time was in Atlanta, Georgia. He said, man, we really need good people in policing. And that was sort of at the very beginning of the police reformation movement. And I decided, man, I'm a smart guy. At least I thought I was. I was looking for adventure, something changing. And so I called the Atlanta Police Department at 45 years old and said, hey, do you need people my age? And essentially their message was, look, if you can fog a mirror and you're not actively smoking crack, you're our guy. Come on. This is good.
They set the bar real high.
You're real high. Yeah. They were just desperate. I mean, they were already low on cops when I joined. My thought was, again, remember the thread throughout my career, even prior to Restoration, was this missional. I want to do something, but I want to feel like I'm making an impact at the same time. So I joined up. Rico, let me tell you, I didn't change policing. I didn't change Atlanta. I didn't really change my beat. It changed me. But the gifts it gave me in terms of refining my ability to operate under pressure, my ability to identify need, my ability to meet people where they are and draw lines across deep cultural divides. I mean, I don't know if you could tell in the camera, but I'm a middle-aged white guy, which is out of fashion, by the way. It's certainly out of fashion on the street in Atlanta.
Right.
And having to overcome what are all of my privileges and assumptions and everything, and bond and convince and work with people in really what was maybe the darkest time of their life. And sometimes I was making it darker. Unbeknownst to me at the time, were really, really undergirding my leadership abilities and nailing some things down that had been in flux for years in my life, so that when I finally left policing, and I have a very, very beautiful wife. She's younger than I am. She's successful. She's better than me in every way that you can be. She decided she wanted, in the middle of this policing experiment, she said, I want to have a baby. So at 50, I'm 50 today, I've got a 2-year-old son. So yet another cautionary tale that I get to be for people as a 50-year-old with a 2-year-old. He's the light of my life. But he was an infant at this time, and I was involved in the riots in Atlanta, and I was coming home covered in, equal parts blood and snot from tear gas and having to go home and take off all my stuff and get in the shower. My wife said, look, you're done. We're going to do something else. So I left policing, moved back to Texas. My wife's family are cattle ranchers, 4th generation cattle ranchers. So we moved onto the land and moved home with this baby we were so excited about. And I was looking around for something else to do. I considered going into adjusting. I considered a lot of different things. I was approached via LinkedIn by some folks at Restoration One. At first, I sort of eye rolled and went, okay, well, let's look at this. And then as I started to do my due diligence in the brand, I recognized some really inherent differences in the way Restoration One was approaching the market that excited me enough to take the job. And I took it. And once I was here, I found out, oh my Lord, I call it a zebra in the horse barn, meaning it looks the same from a distance. But as you get up close, you realize, oh, you guys are really doing something different. And the difference is so fundamental that it's re-energized and reinvigorated my love for restoration beyond what it ever has. I'm incredibly, incredibly excited to be a part of it and privileged to be the president of the brand and get to sit in a leadership position and help kind of continue the legacy. And so it's just been amazing. So that's my nutty resume, a Cliff Notes version of my resume. So I've been through several major brands. The commonality of my restoration is it's been program focused, insurance company focused. And in Restoration One, I get the privilege to re-examine all of my assumptions, because Restoration One is not program focused, won't be in the immediate future anyway. I'm relearning the industry from this new perspective, and it's just fantastic.
That's so amazing. So, I mean, so much to unpack there, which first of all, that's an amazing intro. I mean, that's enough to fill a book. But, you mentioned a couple of things, right? Like how our industry is in fact hustle based, right? Because you need to have that mentality. Yep. I mean, the whole, slogan for our podcast, right, is hustle, hack, and dominate. And hustle is exactly that, finding ways, just going out there, kissing babies, shaking hands, doing the whole bit, whatever it is that you got to do, and have that hustle muscle. And then the quote unquote hack portion of it is what you're referring to, luck, right? It's that preparation meeting opportunity, but that comes with hustle. The more you hustle, like either A, you're going to get clipped, or B, you're going to get really lucky. Like there's usually no in between, right? The real nature of our business and the industry that we're in. And what's really interesting for me though, especially once you and I had our first conversation, was how different the background is, right? Like you're coming from this background where it's all insurance based or predominantly insurance based. And if you recall, like you and I were talking, I told you how we got into the business, and, we got into the business because, again, kind of stemmed from one of these awkward, lucky moments. I had a marketing agency, which I still have, but one of my friends just needed help with, getting their company up off the ground, right? They were working at a small mom and pop shop. I never saw anything, any truck, any van that said restoration or water mitigation in my entire life. Like just my brain didn't pick it up, right? So once we got in, I said, man, we could do this so much better. But I didn't come in jaded. So I didn't know all of these, potentially great things or bad things. All I knew was, okay, somebody has an issue. I need to go ahead and provide this service, and I feel that it's worth X amount of dollars. And that was it. Like that was essentially the business model. And, one thing led to the next, and here we are today, right? So talk to me about like how much of a culture shock that is, because there's a big divide in the industry. What I noticed early on, right, probably about a year and a half of being in the business, by having conversations, you start meeting some of the players in the industry and whatnot, they look like they had these amazing, successful companies, right? I mean, I was envious. Like, I'd see, man, I'd love to have 10 trucks on the road. But then when we would get down to like brass tacks and actually start talking numbers, they weren't profitable. Revenue was amazing, but the profit numbers were really, really small. So, how much of a shock factor is that, you think, for the industry as a whole, or even for yourself coming in from that industry, basically that mindset now into Restoration One? What do you say to people that say, hey, I need to keep my guys busy, so program work is the way to go? Or the people that say, the only way to really scale your restoration business is to do program work? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So, man, listen, I have, first of all, fair warning for you and less for you, because I think you and we've already had conversations. So I think we're on the same page. But to the listeners who are out there, I might say some things that are going to come across as extreme. And what you need to know about me is that it's even more terrifying than you know, because I believe what I'm saying in these extreme things. So just hang on. Program work is heroin for your business, meaning it's going to feel amazing. And then you are going to chase the dragon, trying to catch that initial feeling for the rest of your life, getting skinnier and skinnier and losing teeth and losing assets and losing relationships as you chase that initial high. Because what
you've really thought about this.
Listen, the future of restoration is really only one of two paths. It's very, very simple. And we can geek out on the details. We could talk, you and I could talk for hours on the details. But the future of the restoration industry is in one of two paths, and that is order taker or business person. That's it. Do you want to be a genuine business owner that has a command of your operation, the command of your pricing structure, your costs, your services, your reputation? Or do you want to open a location, throw in a drive-through window, and just have people come by and ask for orders, and somebody outside of your organization says, hey, this is your new price. This is the special on your hamburger. And listen, that's not a moral choice. If there are people who say, I've got $1 million, I want to open a McDonald's. And there's great. That's awesome. You're going to have a McDonald's operation, but you're not going to have the opportunity to say, I've got a great idea for a hamburger, or how to improve the fries, or how to make a little more money. That's out of your hands. You need to have 6 McDonald's in order to make a profit, because you're selling a commodity. And the insurance industry, God bless them, they're smart guys. They're actuaries and lawyers that have come together and to make money, and they're doing it in spades. But those actuaries and lawyers have figured out a way to commodify restoration. And the huge brands and some of the biggest operators out there have partnered with them in the commodification of our work. And as a result, These brands have initially been highly successful at the brand level. They've raked a lot of money and a lot of opportunity to themselves. But what they're now noticing is that there's a cost to that. And that cost is that your profit margin is going to be squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, both from a pricing standpoint and also from a sheer, we don't pay for this many air movers. We don't pay for that piece of equipment. We don't pay for that testing. We don't pay for this or that just because we decided we're not. And so as the restorer, as the quote unquote expert in the field, the chances that you go, I need some air filtration, I need to do ATP testing or to bring in a hygienist, I know what category this water is based on the unique situation. And the insurance company says, nope, it's this. If you are comfortable doing that, then you should do that. I'm not comfortable doing that. I believe that the pendulum has swung as far that direction as it's going to swing. And we're already seeing the evidence of now that pendulum moving back to where the emphasis is going to be on customer service, true expertise. And I'm looking for that army of people, both within my brand and without my brand, that are willing to simply stand up politely and say to the insurance company, you are not my customer. You are that insured's insurer, but the person who has experienced this loss, that homeowner, that business owner, that building owner or manager who is trying to cope with that situation, that's my customer, and I'm going to serve their need best. And I'm going to take their safety in mind primarily over everything else. I'm going to try and produce an experience for them that leaves them feeling safe and restored at every level of their life, not just property, not just drywall, not just flooring, but that their family feels better, their pets feel better, their job feels better. I want to be a positive influence on their entire life. And I'm going to charge for that in an ethical and moral way based on the job costing that I've done inside my business, inside my community and my region. And Mr. or Mrs. Adjuster or insurance or whatever they are, you're going to pay for it. That has resulted in Restoration One. That culture has resulted in Restoration One, where one of the other major brands can do an identical job at this house, and we're doing this house next door, and we make 25 to 35% more on average than they do, receiving the check from the same insurance company. And that's got to be freaking irritating to this guy, right? I mean, right. Super irritating. Not only that, but the reviews coming out of those jobs are just head and shoulders better than this guy over here. And by the way, that's not because this guy's a bad guy. It's not because those techs are terrible and they don't care about people or whatever. The business model that exists today in restoration, Rico, is dependent on me stepping over that homeowner or business owner and doing it as quickly and as efficiently as possible without any regard to how that homeowner feels, just so that insurance company is happy and that adjuster is happy. That's just no way to live. I don't like that. So we're not going to get
Absolutely.
enough pay.
Yeah, exactly. So based on everything that you said, I mean, that deserves an applause. Because it's so true, man. I mean, it's not, quickly and effectively. If you notice how most organizations, most companies, I mean, again, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but here in Florida, we see horror stories, right? I mean, the dryouts, they're not even a dryout. Like, they're just putting down equipment, picking up equipment. Sometimes baseboards are still in place. It's just ridiculous. And when you ask, like, hey, why is this? We know the answer. It's because they have to shortcut. So like the secondary damage actually is even greater than if they just would have done it right the first time. So, let's talk about transparency and pricing for a second, because first of all, yes, I do believe that there's like this stigma now going on in the market, right? Because someone might be hearing you and say, well, you make 25% more, maybe you're price gouging. Which I don't buy that, right? Because there's got to be a transparency in price. I'm assuming that you guys are extremely transparent with the customer, and then you're billing for what it is that you're actually doing. You're not billing for things that you're not doing, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's what business is about. Like, without a profit, the business would shut down. So like, that's the whole idea. I mean, everybody talks about the restoration business And if you listen to the slogans and, when everybody's talking, it's like, oh my God, no, I just do this because I love helping people. And I'm not taking that away from anybody, right? And true, I think you do need to be a quote unquote servant, right? Like there needs to be a purpose for what it is that you do. However, if you remove the money, you'd find something else to do tomorrow.
Of course.
So it's not about the fan. It's not about the drought. It's not about the mold. It's not about the contents. It's number one, it's lucrative. And yes, you also have the added benefit of really impacting this family's life or this homeowner's life, right? But you don't need to do that at the expense of slitting your own throat, catching yourself on fire in order to keep the insurance companies warm. Really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's certainly not serving the business owner. It's not serving the customer. And ultimately, again, even on the insurance side, these things end up in litigation. It's just vicious circle. So what do you say to like a company who, especially like a smaller organization, right? Sub 1 million or sub 3 million that was considering, program work, and they are listening to this and saying, man, you know what? Maybe I can go ahead and increase my bottom line by 25%, 30% just by doing it this way. Like, what would be the big takeaways? Like, what's the advice that someone could go ahead and implement today to maybe get away from do more cash pay jobs, or not even cash pay, because you guys are billing insurance. You're just billing it your way. What would be your biggest takeaway for that kind of business owner?
All right. So let me say this. You're on to something here, Rico, because there is a sense, I think, in some people's mind, we need to apologize for profiting. And that's absolutely not the case. Listen, we charge what we charge because we are an emergency services business. So if I make an appointment to go to the doctor and I go to the doctor and I go, hey, this has been hurting right here, and he takes a look, I pay a certain price. If I wake up in the middle of the night and my face is killing me and I call an ambulance and I'm transported to the emergency room and they do the same exact thing my doctor would do, my bill's going to be 4 times or more higher than it would have been if I'd have gone to the doctor. Now, why is that when it looks as though the services are so similar? It's because that emergency room is standing poised, ready to help you any time of the day. Okay? We have to be ready to move from I have no work to a hurricane on a dime. We have to be able to arrange for the resources, the personnel, the money it takes to produce these waves of work that frequently happen. And we've got to staff up and staff down. We are a different type of contractor. Just as an emergency room physician is a different kind of physician than a primary care physician or a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon. So there's no apologizing for what we do. Now, when you're deciding, do I want to, join a TPA or what, just understand, again, I'm not making a moral judgment. What the decision you're making is to be busy. It has nothing to do with profit. You are worshiping busy. So if you want to, it excites you to come in and see your work in progress board filled up and that stress of how do I get to the next job and how do I get to the next project and oh man, how am I going to get it all done and do we have enough equipment in the warehouse? If that's a place that you like to live and that's what charges you up, it may be that TPAs really, really work. Our owners are charged up by success, but they also see success not only as a money thing, which it definitely is, that's how we keep score, but it's a quality of life thing. It's how much time, in some cases, smaller franchises, and they're still in the millions of dollars, but smaller franchises that are able to maintain a size because of the margins that they are collecting. And those margins allow them to be at the baseball game and not at the warehouse trying to figure out how they're going to get to the next job. And we're making as much, if not more, bottom line than the guy that's out there just moving as fast as he can to get to the next job. It happened in my life. My father-in-law lives in an area of the country that is not serviced by Restoration One, had a water damage in his house. I'll try and cut this down. And one of the major brands showed up. Didn't ask what category it was. It was definitely category 3. They treated it as a category 1, just as you're talking about. They came in, they slapped down some dehues and air movers, didn't move a stick of furniture, didn't remove a baseboard, didn't do anything, just dropped it and took off. 3 days later, no monitoring in between. 3 days later, showed up, did some very cursory, non-invasive monitoring, decided it was dry.
Selective monitoring,
and left and sent a bill Here's the deal. When he complained to the insurance company said, I don't know, they're the expert. He went to them, said, hey, this is not right. I'm growing some things behind my baseboards. My furniture is expanding. I'm starting to smell things. I'm having nasal issues. They said, I don't know, your insurance company. And so immediately he gets triangulated out in the cold while the other two point at each other, and he ends up bringing a public adjuster. This claim now is many, many, many times what it would have been had they just simply done the right thing from the beginning. And they didn't, not because they didn't care. I'm convinced that those technicians may or may not have cared, but the owner of that business, I guarantee you, isn't at home going, ha ha ha, I can't wait to screw this guy's house up. He's simply going, look, this is one of 10 of these jobs. Get them put down, put the equipment in, get them pulled out. Their standard of how to do a water damage is dictated by the insurance company, not the job, not the customer, not the true needs. And that's just not a way that you would want your physician to act. You wouldn't want your restaurant, your daycare. I mean, it's just not how you want people to react. You want them to see you. So you need to understand this. Anyone who's been on a TPA, and I have been on a TPA, realizes the waiting line to get your position on that TPA is long and aggressive. And the second that you screw up or even have the perception of having screwed up a job, and by screw up a job, it means a customer sues somebody because you did what they wanted you to do, and there's some kerfuffle around that, you will be the one to be hung out to dry. They will kick you off the TPA, and you will go from busy to dead in the water, and you will have no personal agency for how to increase your business. You will be where you are today all over again, but just with 2 or 3 times the staff and equipment, and you'll have to start from where I'm telling you to start now, which is get out, meet people in your community, own your community. Whatever your footprint is, you got to know every single building owner, every industry, every HOA, every restaurant. I mean, you want to be the expert inside your community and know what the needs are inside that place and get out there and hustle, man, and shake hands and explain to people that your insurance company is there to pay the bill, but they're not there to choose the contractor. And if you want somebody that you can trust, it starts with a handshake right here. And Rico, that message is resonating louder and louder and louder every day. As we experience more, it used to be that there were insurance companies had it made. There were relatively few hurricanes. There were relatively few events. Some people might go virtually their entire life and never have an insurance claim. Now, more and more people are having insurance claims, and what they're finding out is that the promises made in that 30-second commercial aren't exactly the things that actually happen when that insurance company gets involved. They're a lot more no than they are yes. And so more and more people are recognizing, man, I might need to take this into my own hands. I might need to be more involved in this, and that's going to benefit the independent restorer, and it's benefit Restoration One because we see ourselves as the independent franchisor. We're in the middle between the independent guy and all the other guys that are in this lane that are just hat in hand to the insurance companies. We're in another lane. Again, we get paid by those guys. So it's not like we hate them. We're just not. Right. We just don't see them as the customer. The customer's the guy, the lady, the person standing right in front of us.
Exactly. So on that note, there's like so much to unpack there. And as soon as we go ahead and thank our sponsors, I'm going to jump back. We're going to have one more question about insurance, and then we're going to go into the nitty gritty about actually generating the dollars. Photo documentation is possibly one of the most important aspects of what it is that we do in the restoration business. Not only so that the client knows exactly what's going on, but also so that you can prove your work to insurance companies. One of the best ways that I found to go ahead and document our projects is by using Company Cam. Company Cam is an amazing app. It has so many features, everything from time-stamped and GPS located photos, individual project files, unlimited unlimited photo storage, in-app communication with your crew, a live stream of all of your projects as the photos are coming in, as if it was an Instagram feed. So from a managerial standpoint, Company Cam can help you there as well. But more importantly, it gives you the ability to protect your organization while documenting and keeping everything nice and neat. So we've got a really special offer for you. If you go to companycam.com/dominate, not only will you get your 14-day free trial, but you're also going to get the first 2 months 50% off. So again, head on over to companycam.com/dominate, get the app, and I'm sure you're going to love it. All right, guys. So we are back. So let's go ahead and talk about insurance for one more second, and then we can go ahead and get off that, soapbox here for a second. So a lot of people are talking about, probably hearing you speak, and they say, hey, okay, great. Well, great. I'm not going to do TPA work. I need to increase my pricing. I'm not going to use standard TPA pricing. So, but now what's the insurance company going to say when they say, look at my brand new bill? So that's one of those things that I keep hearing this argument over and over again, right? It's like, well, great. Yeah, we can go ahead and try to increase our profit margin by 30% or 40%, or even sometimes adding just 10 and 10 OMP. Like, it's like, no, we're not going to pay that. So great. Maybe you have all the transparency in the world with the end consumer, right? Which is the next topic that we're going to get into, which is actually educating the public. But let's just pretend for a second that you're walking into a loss. You're having this conversation with the homeowner. You educate the homeowner and you say, dear Mr. Homeowner, the insurance company isn't going to go to bat for you. This is what our pricing is. This is exactly what we need to do and why we need to do it. Here's the agreement. Yes, do you agree with everything? Fantastic. You bill the insurance company. The insurance company says, screw you. What's the argument there? Or how do you put those concerns to bed and give the confidence for the restoration companies to say, you know what? I can get this. I'm due this money. I'm worth this amount of money, and someone's going to pay me. So what's that conversation look like? And we are back. Now, for those of you watching and listening, I just want you to know and understand that the insurance must have done some voodoo, or something must be going on. And there are forces out there in the universe that do not want you to hear this message. Literally, there was a vehicle that slammed into a pole where, I guess, near Tom, and this almost didn't happen. So this is officially, after the break, is part 2 of the interview. So so it's got to be some good stuff.
That's right.
Awesome. So we were talking about insurance, and the question that I had for you, which again, I don't know if it got cut off or not, but we're going to go ahead and redo this whole little bit again, is what do you say to the organization who says, hey, look, we can go ahead and bill whatever it is that we want to bill, but how do we actually get our money from the insurance carrier, right? Like, we can have all the transparency in the world with the consumer and say, hey, look, these are our labor hours. This is what our rental equipment costs, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, they're still signing an AOB, and the insurance company is the one who's saying, well, we don't pay for this. We don't pay for that. So what comfort do you give to the business owner out there and let them know, hey, yes, there is a way for you to get your money, and what exactly is that way?
It's a great question. It is one of the pain points. I won't pretend that isn't an area that we concentrate on, because it's an issue. Adjusters are there to second guess what you've put on that bill. Now, the first thing I'll say is this, Rico, and if I get too granular, you'll have to either edit it out or just stop me, but it's an area that I'm learning. Again, my background was, if the adjuster said X, I did X. I didn't question it. That they were the answer, right? So I'm learning now what it means to be the kind of business that, number one, defends their bill vigorously, documents their bill vigorously, but it's really about which pain do you want? Because it is a pain to develop the systems inside your business and the expertise and the discipline to document your bill as thoroughly as possible. That means that your pictures match the order of the line items that are in your estimate, whether those line items come from Xactimate or come from some other platform or come from whatever, it's something that you're dreaming up. Can you justify your billing? Can you show proof as to why you're charging what you charge? Do you know the standards by which you're operating? For instance, if you are operating according to the IICRC S500, if we're talking about water, how comfortable are you with the S500 as a document? And Rico, I got to be honest with you, man. Many restorers are not. They'll say, oh, we're IICRC certified. Maybe I take a WRT class. Maybe I took ASD, maybe even I've taken commercial drying. But in terms of really knowing what's in the S500, many don't. So what I recommend is that you take portions of that S500 and you put it as an F9 note inside your estimate proactively. I didn't make this up. I learned this from someone along the way. But basically, your estimate should be constructed in such a way that if you were called into court, you could grab your estimate and use that estimate as your defense document, either for your bill or for your actions. So you want to over document, hyper document. You want your pictures labeled. You want more than that. Here's a tip I'll give to you. If your pictures illustrate a job site in which that job site is orderly, it's picked up, you've put down some sort of protective material over the wood floors, you've taped down your cords and your tubing, and the cuts, if you've made them on walls, are straight. And if it looks as though someone has taken great care inside the pictures, you have a 15 to 20% more better chance statistically of getting the entirety of your bill. If your pictures look like Sanford and Son had a rave at this party, and and listen, good adjusters will zoom in on the filters section of a dehumidifier and see, is that filter changed? Does it look new? Has the equipment been wiped down? One of the things that we charge for a lot is that we disinfect every piece of equipment that comes off of a job after every single job. And the reason why we do that is obvious. We live in a pandemic world, and I don't want to take whatever, the weekly variant of COVID is and spread it to the next house or whatever, from a category 3 situation to a category 1 situation. So we charge for that every single time. Part of that means then that in our photographs, our equipment looks clean, looks like it's been disinfected. So that's very, very important. So those fundamentals of knowing how to write an estimate so that it is the questions or arguments that adjuster have are cut off from the very beginning. If someone is immunocompromised in that house, they have asthma, they have anything else, that's been documented, and that either a signed letter from the homeowner has been attached as an object, or that you've got something inside that estimate, so that the adjuster doesn't even have to think about, well, we're not going to pay for X, Y, or Z. When they have that thought, they're going to look up and go, oh, they thought of that before I did.
Something, especially with a lot of water mitt jobs, everybody knows if you try to put in an air scrubber, they're like, well, why do you have an air scrubber? Well, it's because I've got 15 fans here and the person's got asthma. So, but again, it just goes to show the devil's in the details, right? Just being able to document everything. Something that we talk about a lot on the show is the importance of documentation. Just, I have a saying, if the enemy is smarter, confuse them. If he's bigger, go around them, right? And part of when you're dealing with insurance companies, especially the desk adjuster or the claims examiner, is, hey, look, they're looking at trying to knock down your bill, right? They want to go to their boss on Friday and be like, hey, did you see how much money we saved? Like, or whatever that conversation looks like. But if you've got, hundreds of photos that you're sending, and they're strategic photos as to what you're sending, like that just changes the entire game. And again, a lot of these people that are making these calls on your money, they're not the pros. Like, they've never laid down fans. They don't know what it's like to do mold remediation. Like, zero clue, yet they are dictating, and the industry to some degree has allowed them to be dictated and say, hey, look, this is the only thing that you work. So I know that we're pressed for time, so I want to get into some of the nitty gritty, right? Let's talk now about marketing. Like, how do we get the phone ringing? How do we go ahead and get to the end consumer and start driving some numbers, right? Because a lot of the disconnect in the industry is, especially when I talk to them about marketing and the importance of marketing, and you and I have had this conversation before, where I'm a firm believer that every single organization, especially if you're an owner operator or if you're the very, very top, you need to have a basic understanding of how marketing works, because the most important thing that you could possibly do in your business after you get your certifications, after you're a great guy, after you are a pillar of the community, like after all of that, you need to learn how to drive traffic. If not, like, it doesn't matter how good you are, right? Like, you're not going to be able to provide your service. So what does that mechanism look like? And what do you see on the horizon for, tactics that restoration companies should be employing as far as marketing is concerned?
Some of this, Rico, respectfully, is what you pay me the big bucks in a license fee for. So there is some secret sauce that I'm not going to let out, because that's what we sell franchises for. But I will talk in broad terms about what I believe the future looks like and what's important, what people ought to be doing. Number one, it's a unique industry in the sense, again, we've said this in the past. You don't know this industry exists until you need it. And that's a strange place to be. There aren't many things like that, right? I know where I can get clothes. I've needed clothes my whole life. I understand what a hospital and a doctor is, and there, almost anything that you might want. Their marketing is driven by just steering your knowledge of that space in a direction. We have to start with, this space exists. So that's going to happen in the digital environment. So we have to be masters of digital marketing better than anybody else on the planet in every possible way that can be done. Right. So, and I say those words understanding that I am not that. I hire people that understand the language of digital marketing, and I partner with firms that have exhibited excellence in that space. But I'll tell you, even within the space of large digital marketing firms or even boutique digital marketing firms, what I'm finding is that you can find a great digital marketing firm, but they don't have any experience in the restoration world, and they suck at it. Even though they are awesome and can give you amazing results for their customers in the past, you really need to find partners that understand the restoration space specifically and can tell you about the creative ways that you can get out there. But I think the future, honestly, even in that space, is in the social media. So many people are stuck on Facebook or what, but I'm a big fan of TikTok. I'm a big fan of YouTube ads. I'm a big fan of we got to be attacking at every possible level. If there is a new platform out there, let's start looking into that new platform immediately, because we cannot afford to rest on our laurels for a second in that digital space. It's absolutely crucial. So we spend a metric ton of money and time trying to figure out how we can continue to be among the best at doing that particular thing. So that's one side. And I can't even speak very well that. You could do much better because you've spent a great portion of your life digging into that kind of space. But let me speak at a high level about marketing in general, because that digital space, in my estimation, is not enough. It is one piece. It does not replace shoe leather on the street, kissing babies and shaking hands, Rico, like you said at the beginning. There's no way around it. You got to do it. And this is where we start to make some of our largest mistakes. In my estimation, I'm going to make some statements. Would love to argue. Combat is my love language. Okay. So when I look at LinkedIn, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, it's an underutilized platform for this sort of thing in my estimation. Restoration companies are all making the same mistake, and that they are assuming that the public, even the public that uses their services, are interested in their stuff. So it's like, let me show you my dehumidifier. Let me show you the piece of equipment that gets the wood floor up. Let me talk about, the 7 ways to limit mold or microbial growth and yada, yada. And we're constantly peppering people with these lists that are just made out of dust and boredom, man. No one's reading them. Maybe they exist for some sort of reason to kind of elevate your overall brand or whatever, I guess, but it's not having the impact. The impact you're looking for, the best companies out there, and hopefully we're one of them, are making it their mission to solve the problems of the people who could give us work. And those problems, may not be restoration related. We walk in and we try and solve every problem. Hey, how can I help you today? Well, I need more customers. Well, let me tell you about dehumidification.
I'm so glad that you're talking, about this, because again, you can go back into my podcast and I probably mention this a lot more than what people would like. I've been preaching hard since the very beginning, and maybe because I came from a place of ignorance and I just didn't know the rest of the spectrum of what happened in restoration. But for me, it was a simple problem. Like, if you're a plumber and you're a lead source for me giving you $1,000, first of all, like, that's not cool, because next time, like, if Johnny down the street becomes a plumber or he becomes a restoration guy, all of a sudden that's it. Like, my $1,000 no longer is worth $1,000, right? You're going to give it to your buddy down the street, or tons of other scenarios, right? You get a sexier looking marketer that walks into your office, and guess what? Rico's out the window, right? But now if I ask that plumber, what's your major issue? Like, what is it that I can help you most? Even if he doesn't say it, typically it's always, how can you drive more business to my doorstep? Like, that's it. And we're in such a unique position in the restoration industry that we touch tons of industries, from public adjusters to the roofers to flooring guys to you name it, right? So, like, ground zero is really us, the restoration industry. And when I talk about owners, especially, the smaller operations out there, or even, franchise owners maybe that, have 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, whatever, I think this rule applies across the board. When you understand digital marketing, now your boots on the ground are much more powerful. Why? Because now you're actually coming with value. Now I can say, hey, Mr. Plumber, by the way, yes, I know that you use so-and-so down the street, but let me ask you a question. How's your revenue actually looking? Oh, well, you know what, Rico, let me ask you, or even maybe they'll say, you know what, it's great. Like, fantastic. Just out of curiosity, how much real revenue is that company drawing to you? Like, all of a sudden you start asking that to a business owner and your ear perks up, because now you're like, okay, well, wait, why do you care about this? Well, let me tell you why, Mr. Plumber, because this is what we do. So, like, for me, digital marketing is so important, because now you have the ability to go ahead and add value to other organizations as well. Now, again, that's my model, but that's a model that if you can clone that and you can be successful for yourself, and then at the same time be successful or make other business owners successful as well, that changes the game.
Yeah, it totally changes. It does. When you provide value in the form that your lead source wants it and needs it, they will provide value to you in the form that you need it. And there's no mystery to that. They know what you need. They'll give you what you need. But what they need is so often not a frickin' air mover. They need more customers.
They need better retention.
They need to increase their bottom line. They need to increase their business acumen. So great companies, including some of ours, and including me in my past in other places that I've operated, have done things like this. We're going to have a class in which we talk about, how do you answer the phone properly? What's good phone etiquette? How do I close a deal over the phone? And we're going to be teaching my guys how to do that. I'm inviting you to bring your people in so that we can teach them how to close on the phone too, whether it's an insurance agent or a plumber or a you fill in the blank. Can your people come in and just learn from this guest guy that I've come in, this consultant that I've got to discuss it? And now what I've done is I've bettered that person's business. I've helped increase their employee knowledge and effectiveness for virtually no real cost or bother to me. You talked about digital marketing. If I know something about digital marketing and I can teach people how to be better in their space using the same principles, it's incredible what kind of value that can bring to somebody. And it's not a mystery. They'll help you by giving you leads. And over the course of time, you become family to these people. You become, the strength of relationship is so much more durable when it's approached from that direction than some cash in an envelope or onto a credit card or some attendance to a ball game or whatever the traditionals are. We essentially need to go out every single day and say, how can I help you solve your problem? And maybe I don't know the solution, but another person inside of my network of people does. So come to lunch. I'm going to bring both of you to lunch. I'm going to introduce you, tell you the problem, step out of the way and eat my chicken fried steak. But what I've become is the middle of that web. I'm the person that's bringing all the different loves and hearts and needs and everything together so that gravity is centered on me. So what I help people do in this arena, which is, a high level, is not to do marketing that's door to door to door to door where I'm handing out a pamphlet and hoping that I'm top of mind someday, but instead to build a community of people around me that have my best interest at heart to the degree that I have their best interest at heart. And when you do that, you'll grow a business that it grows fast, is durable, and holds its value so that when you want to sell or pass it down, that's where the money comes. So yeah, we've got to be so much better than that. We've got to really, really see people, Rico. And we don't.
I totally agree. And also, let's just be honest. Like the public adjuster who's a public adjuster, sure, maybe he loves his job, right? Like, and there's this huge taboo thing about talking about money. Like, guys, let's talk about what it is, right? That guy wants referrals. Like that's what he wants. That's what he needs. That's how he's going to put his kids through school. The water mitigation guy, he needs water jobs, right? Like that's what he wants in his lane. He just needs more water jobs, right? So to actually have those like bottom conversations and be like, hey, look, let's just get down to the nitty gritty. What is it that you need? Well, this guy over here is giving me $1,500 referral. That's great. But what if I could go ahead and contribute, $150,000, $200,000 to your business, to your real business, keeping your guys busy, all of a sudden that conversation now changes. So kind of switching gears real quick. We talked about marketing, the importance of marketing and actually understanding people and all of that stuff, which leads us to one of the huge conversations in every industry right now, which is personnel, right? Like bodies to actually do the work that needs to get done. So the big question is, what do we do about the quote unquote labor shortage? I have my own opinions on the issue, but I'd love to get your ideas as to, number one, how do you acquire better quality people, good quality people for our industry? And, how do you scale a business in this kind of a landscape?
Wow. Fantastic question, Rico. Let's get into it. So we do live in a world in which labor is getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and that puts a certain amount of pressure on us. So really the twin areas we got to look at is one, how can we always drive efficiency? Do we need to carry people on our staff at a large level, or can we get efficient? Can we use technology to its fullest? Can we do remote monitoring? Can we use, how many people do we really need? So we not always need to be looking at that. So pay fewer people more money, the first thing that I would say. But more importantly, and frankly more difficult, is that one of the reasons that we lose people or cannot retain or can even hire them is because the culture inside of our companies suck. We have companies that people don't want to work for because we don't care about our employees, not really at the end of the day. We don't invest in them. We don't try and figure out, look, if you've got people on your staff, for instance, that English is not their first language, one of the things that you can do for them is to bring people in after hours at your workplace for no charge that helps them develop their English speaking skills, that helps them to better operate inside their own communities. Maybe you bring people in to talk about financial management. I would lose people. Here's what I found. I would lose people in my businesses that would leave me for $1 or less an hour. They would competition would come in and say, I'll give you this much. And because it was more, they would leave. And man, it would irritate the mess out of me. I'm like, either I got in a bidding war for somebody I really didn't want, or I was just left hurt and felt sort of broken up with by somebody that I felt like I was doing right by that left me for what I saw was a negligible amount of money. Well, number one, that money was negligible to me. In my privilege, wasn't negligible to them. But number two, what I noticed was the reason why that amount of money was more important to them was because they didn't know how to manage their personal finances. They didn't know how to get out of the hole of poverty or struggle that they were in personally. And so that fraction of $1 more was light at the end of some mythical tunnel that meant maybe it was easier to buy diapers or formula or daycare or whatever else. So I brought financial management as one of the things I taught to my employees, just as important as IICRC stuff or how to clean and repair equipment or take care of the trucks. In one of my companies, I did something that was revolutionary to me. And I've been trying to tell people to do this, and few have taken me up on it. I was in a strip center, and the area next to me came up, and I really needed the warehouse portion of it, but I didn't need the office space. And I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to tear it out? The landlord says, no, I'm not going to let you tear out the office space because then it's less marketable after you leave. And so I was left stuck going, man, what am I going to do with this office space? And I had this brilliant idea, honestly, or somebody probably gave it to me, if I'm being honest. And I decided to bring in an employee, couple of employees, was really reasonable rate. And I started a in-house daycare for my own employees that needed daycare. And that daycare not only was during business hours, but these people would come in if we got busy and worked 24 hours, which we sometimes were, or had a job that was in at night, they would come in. And so it was a de facto 24-hour daycare that I funded out of my own space. Why would I do that? Am I just Daddy Warbucks and super, like, oh, kumbaya and love everybody? No, it had profound business impact to my business. One, it made people respond to jobs better because they couldn't use the excuse of I can't find daycare. So guys that were even on call, they were like, oh, I'd come in, but I can't, yada, yada. It eliminated that excuse. Second of all, it put hundreds of dollars into their pocket for the cost of a $15 an hour employee.
Right.
Okay. So they were, suddenly you come in and offer them a couple more bucks an hour. It wasn't worth it because they would move and take that couple of bucks, but now they have to pay for daycare.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it cost me this much, but it gave me this much, and it improved everybody's life. You didn't have to drop. Now your kid, you came back to work as soon as you were done. Boop, kid was in the car. You were off to the store. It was so wonderful. And I recommend people do that all the time. Now, of course, there are state laws and you got to figure out, there are hurdles you got to jump through. But the idea is a good one. And it's the sort of thing that when you put that inside your company, suddenly you're going to find the line increase of people wanting to work because single moms, dads, family people are going to go, I want to be a part of this, man. You mean there's a place for my kid to come after school in the separate room and do their homework and play some video games that I don't have to find an after school program? They can just be right here and then we leave as soon as we're done. Man, I got you. So we have to do a better job of building cultures inside of our businesses that people want to work for. And when that happens, you're going to have less churn. You're going to get higher quality people, and it's ultimately going to save you money. And not only that, here's another thing. I'll do one more thing on the daycare bit. It was so unusual at the time that the local newspaper, which I don't even know if they exist anymore, came and did an article on my company for doing this as an innovative way. And the article led to more business. So don't put your business into silos, man. Your production people, when you treat them correctly, become salespeople, right? Where they go to church, where their kids go to school, their friends and family, etc. When they go, you're not going to believe the job I've got. They really care about me and invest in me. They're teaching me how to better control my own finances. They're concerned about my kids. They're worried about my grocery bill. They're worried about my insurance. You put those things inside of there, they're going to find ways to be invested in your business in a way that grows, that betters your service and grows your business. So the onus is on us to be better, to capture the best.
And there's such a blurry line, right, between what makes you a good business owner. Because when you talk about, at least for me, when I look at a situation like that, right, I look at it as the better you understand humans and their basic needs, the better that you are as an entrepreneur, right? So is it how tactful you are and how your business acumen for you to be able to realize and say, hey, you know what? I'm not in the daycare business, but if I do this thing, then by default, this other great thing happens. My employees stick around a lot longer, or are you just the type of person that, and I'm saying you like figuratively, right? Or are you just saying, hey, you know what would be really great for my employees if I had a place where they can just drop off their kids? So it's like, number one, are you driven by the money and the implications of it? Or are you driven by the human aspect of it? But either way, my response is, It doesn't matter. Like, a good deed is a good deed, right? And that's where I think there's this magic area. And if you notice, like, really great entrepreneurs, it's always teetering on that line. And you can always be like, oh, well, did he do that because he's such a phenomenal guy, like a good Samaritan? Or is there a tactical advantage? And normally those lines just perfectly intersect, right? Because you're servicing the basic human need of your employees, business partners, and you don't have a business without those people. And to some degree, that, to kind of take your story a little bit further, that's marketing. Because now, if
marketing.
Susie Q, which is what I've been talking about, quite a bit, people are talking about, I'm not drawing people. I'm like, okay, do you have current people now? Do you have people that are working with you now that you feel good about? Yeah, I have great people. All right. How are they representing your company while they're not at your company? Like, do they have a social media presence? Are they posting about how great the company is, right? Because now they become your cheerleaders. And, if that person has just 500 friends and they see how happy they are at their new opportunity, at their new job, well, guess what? People are going to start inquiring. They're going to want to start, participating with that organization as well. So all of this is phenomenal marketing, and it all boils down to the human element.
Rico, that's absolutely it, man. If we had enough time, maybe you and we should just find a beach somewhere and write a book, because there's a human element that's at the core of all of this. And when I say something's a good idea, a really good idea is good for everyone and good for your pocketbook. It's not either or, it's everything. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a piece to, because we were talking before about what are the problems that your potential customers have and how do you solve them? If you've got employees leaving or can't find employees, what are the problems? What are their problems? Right. And figure out how to solve those problems inside your business. And finally, I found that when you start to build a culture that's inside your business, those people that work for you will bring friends. They'll say, hey, when their buddy's like, I hate my job, I think I'm going to quit, they'll be like, hey, come talk to my boss. I love where I work. So that's one. But number two, you'll be prouder of your own business, and you'll start to tell people about it too. When you're at the restaurant or so let's stop stealing everybody else's employees and instead find new ones where we live. I found my best employees at a movie theater, at a racetrack, at a whatever, and said, hey man, are you happy doing what you're doing? They're like, not really. Well, I got something for you, And it was because I was proud of what I built and I wanted to bring the best into it. So
another thing on talking about, personnel is also, at least from my perspective, and I know a lot of bigger companies, they don't necessarily look at it this way, but everybody's talking about the labor shortage. They can't find people. All right, cool. But then those same exact individuals, if you do a quick Google search, there's 35 restoration companies right in their own backyard. Why not collaborate? Like, there's first of all, there's more than enough money to go around for everyone. So if I'm having a hard time for whatever reason, right? Maybe I don't have the financial wherewithal. Maybe I'm legitimately just not a good leader, right? But I do have lead flow. And now I also know that there's 10 other companies right in my backyard, maybe a chuck in a truck, maybe, a guy who's trying to keep 15 people on payroll, whatever. But if I come to them and I say, hey, by the way, I have these deals. How do you feel about, collaborating? All of a sudden, your labor shortage is a thing of the past. So, I mean, I'd love for someone real like you to break down my belief on that. I mean, what's your take on taking that kind of an approach?
Listen, I'm so glad you said that. We operate, and I think, I don't have the language around this, man. I wish I did, but I think this is actually a product of the insurance companies. I think it's a product of how we've grown up that's convinced us that we live in a poverty situation, that we operate from an opportunity of lack. Like, oh man, a ServPro opened up across the street and I'm going to drive them out of business. And oh man, how are they doing well? What do I? And meanwhile, they'll never cross the street and introduce themselves. And the idea is they're going to take my claim. There are billions of dollars of business in this industry, and we turn them down all the time. How many times have I or my franchisees filled up with work and then just stopped answering the phone or said, sorry, we can't get to you, instead of saying, hey, I can't get to you, I'm full up, but I've got a guy I can recommend, and then give them to your other guy. Because, and now sit down with those guys. I'm having a trouble in this area. What can you offer me? Now, just in every area of life, some of those guys are going to be jerks. Some are going to be dishonest. You don't want to deal with those guys. But among them are a majority of people that are just trying to do the same thing you're doing. Good people trying to build good businesses. The world exists where both can. There's a Lowe's right across from Home Depot. There's a Target right across from Walmart. They're competition in a way, but they also know being close draws money. We need to be close to everyone in our industry and stop with this silly bickering that's really caused by the people who are profiting off of us. And this is not theoretical. There's a whole layer of restoration contractors that exist to just take the overflow from the rest of them. And then on the top, there's these layers of large loss providers that take what the people can't do from the middle. So there's people passing leads all back and forth, but we don't do it between the silos because we think there's not enough money. Meanwhile, everyone's eating in fat. Let's break down those walls, be a leader. Bring your guys together, meet once a month for breakfast, share what's appropriate to share. And I guarantee you're going to see things open up and expand as you do that are phenomenal, man. That's wisdom.
Man. So for those of you watching and listening, if you're wondering like how to do this, let me just give you some quick tactical advice on some ideas, right? Slack is a phenomenal channel, right? This is basically, it's basically like a chat, if you will. You can download the app right on your phone. You have it on your computer. And as you start having conversations with other restoration companies, just to say, hey, by the way, it seems like this is going to be a great fit. Why don't you join our Slack channel? That way, once we have projects, we can just share them in there. And, whenever we need to collaborate. So now what you're doing is you're getting a community, a small little tight knit community, which is extremely powerful, involved. And it's amazing what happens from there, right? You're going to have the entrepreneur who's going to, have different issues outside of jobs that they can't handle, right? Maybe this is a mentoring opportunity for you, whatever the case may be. The point is that there's tons of technology that can be harnessed if done properly to bring these worlds closer together and actually have a degree of collaboration, which I think is really what the industry should be about.
It's going to make us more powerful because I'll tell you who doesn't have a problem collaborating, the insurance industry. They're all talking to each other. They're making sure they're putting money in the right pocket to make sure laws are passed that benefit them. We need to be more about that ourselves, defending our rights as contractors and our ability to defend ourselves out there. To the degree that we don't, to the degree that we bicker over the crumbs, it's to our detriment. That's
exactly right.
Near and
well, awesome, man. Look, I know that we have probably gone over with everything that happened today with the witchery that happened with the power, but listen, for those that are listening and watching, if they want to go ahead and reach out to you, they're like, man, Tom is my guy. I need to connect. Where would they find you? What social media channels are your best ones?
I'm on LinkedIn. And like I said, a lot. I'm off of Facebook. I try not to get into Facebook. So I'm on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Tom Gissler, Gissler. You can also email me. That's Tom, TOM, at Restoration HQ.com. Just email me. I'm really, really super busy by my own creation. So I may not get back to you that day, but I will eventually get back to you. Just put it out there. Say, let's meet. Let's get together and talk. I talk to guys from other brands that are competition. I talk to people in other industries. Listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I just like to hang around with really, really smart people. Rico, you being one.
Man,
so it's the future for those of us that have some hustle left in the bones is extremely bright. And I want to get there with some guys that I can cut up with. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Hey, man. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day. We know that you're extremely busy. We appreciate all the, value bombs that you dropped today. Your energy is absolutely amazing. And yeah, man, we got to do this again because I'm sure we could go for like another 3 hours on this topic and just keep digging deeper and deeper. But we'll go ahead and earmark that for another day. Meanwhile, Restoration Nation, make sure that you check out Tom. The links are going to be in the video description in the show notes below, and we will catch you on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.